everyone. Welcome to a brand new episode of TheOutlier podcast. I have a very interesting panel today. Joining me is Jill Castilla, the CEO of Citizens Bank of Edmond, and obviously the founder of Roger. We have we have with us also Bryan Clagett, the homie, right? So Bryan Clagett is
Wait a minute. Did you call me the homie?
So Bryan is a fintech advisor. Bryan, in my 2 cents, I introduced Bryan as one of the most practical fintech gurus I've ever seen. Right. So Bryan is an advisor to 10 plus fintechs. He gets what is happening. Right. I mean, I can do a laundry list about Bryan, but let's not do it. It'll consume the entire time. So let's get into action. Let's start with the first question. Right. Jill, now you're the center of attraction in this podcast. Me and Bryan, we want to talk to you. Let's start the podcast by asking you one quick question, right? Why don't you? Can you share a little background about who Jill is? That's the first question, and then obviously a follow-up question is like, what motivated or what pushed you to move into banking?
Well, thanks. It's so good to see everybody and such great friends, and honored to be here today. Gosh, I don't know how I would describe myself, but I'm wife, mom of three adult kids, two of which are serving in the military, community banker, former regulator, and former soldier. From Oklahoma originally, and have been back here in Edmond for 15 years, and at the helm of Citizens for about a decade. Lots of meandering through those years, but really proud to be where I am.
So, Jill, how did you end up at Citizens?
I grew up in eastern Oklahoma, and I ended up enlisting in the Army National Guard whenever I was 19, and then got married, kind of a wandering story there. I grew up really economically vulnerable, and I was trying to find a way to go to college, and that required a lot of starts and stops and restarts. We ended up in Hawaii married with our first child. My mom actually married into the family that's part of the ownership here at Citizens, and so we were thinking about coming back to Oklahoma, and so I started working at minimum wage in the bookkeeping department at Citizens Bank of Edmond. I then rapidly found another job with the Federal Reserve Bank of Kansas City in their management development program. So I stayed there for a decade. And then when I was growing up, the community banker in town, the woman that was the matriarch of the local community bank, I would carry groceries out for her. And she's the one that encouraged me to go to college. Her grandkids were all my age. And she was like, you can't stay here in this little small town, Jill, you need to get out. And she would pay for me to go to different camps, to pay for me to take the ACT. And so I have this very idealistic view before I ever saw It's a Wonderful Life of a community banker and what they do. And so the Fed had me go, after they paid for me to get my master's in economics, they paid for me to go to graduate school of banking. You pretend run a bank your third year of banking school. And I love this banking model, and I never thought about leaving the Fed. My goal was to be the president of the Kansas City Fed someday. But I just fell in love with this business model, but also knowing Mrs. Mayberry was still alive then, just knowing the impact that the banker had in our community, well beyond loans and deposits. It was about caring for the citizens of the community. It's a staple as much as the churches were and as much as the school were. That's the community banker was that big of a influence in the quality of life that we had and where the citizens went. And so I just fell in love with that. And for 3 years, one of my classmates had been recruiting me to his family's bank in northern Minnesota. And so that third year, I was like, I just feel called to do this. It feels like I'm called. I just want to be who I am without Mrs. Mayberry. And to have the opportunity to potentially have that influence on others was just something that I just felt like a dream. So I went to northern Minnesota, 3 hours north of Minneapolis, for 2 years. And then I got a call from my stepfather that the bank here was in trouble. It was the financial crisis, 2009, which Oklahoma was really insulated from, but the bank had done some pretty bad things, and the regulators found those bad things. So he asked if I would be willing to come down and help turn around the bank. He didn't run the bank. He was the chairman and largest shareholder, but didn't really have influence off of what they could offer me. So I came in at 50% of a pay cut, as like the assistant treasurer, and came into a situation where I found rampant fraud. And so within 6 months, had to let go the entire senior leadership team and start a turnaround of the institution. So that's kind of how the journey got me here.
Wow. You know, I've always said that banking is the epitome of the people business, right? When it's done right. You know, we've talked about high tech, high touch forever, but the part about banking that I miss when I was in your seat basically was working with the people, not just the employees, but obviously the customers, the small business customers, our middle market customers, and the consumers. That is the most gratifying part, in my opinion.
Well, and I'm sitting right here in the lobby, so I sit right behind our teller line, so I can see the face of our community. You can see when there's anxiety or optimism, worry. There's just nothing like being in a bank lobby and seeing either the stress or success of the community unfolding in front of you. And so that social aspect of it and the amount of influence you can have in bad times, turning them into good, and to good times, making sure that everybody has accessibility to prosperity, it's an incredibly privileged position to be in.
So I'm going to ask the next question, and I'm going to ask it of Anurag as well, and I'll start with Anurag. Throwing you off course here just a bit, Anurag. Thinking about, both of you, thinking about 2025 and kind of the new era we're about to enter, if you want to call it that. You know, what do you think the challenges of 2025 will be for the community banking space? Anurag, I'll give you a minute to answer that.
I think for me, broadly, two-pronged. Once liquidity risk still exists and it will continue to exist. I mean, the macroeconomic conditions have improved this year. Rates are going down, but still not as much as we need. That's one. Second is for typical community banks, right? At the end of the day, you have to still compete with the large guys, still compete with the fintechs, the newer banks. Today, I can go to a Chime and open a checking account in 3 minutes. So, what will motivate someone like me, I call myself a zillennial, to walk up to a community bank and become a consumer? So, attracting younger consumers is always a challenge. And I think this will remain a challenge for 2025 unless we are very specific in spending our dollars well, in acquiring the right set of people and build the future, right? So one is the current state of liquidity risk, and second is talking about future. You need to have very important focus on tomorrow. So I think these are the challenges that are there. It will remain. Might be the first one will reduce with rates going down, the macro conditions improving. But the second, it needs a lot of surgical efforts. It's a transformation initiative that we need to start right now. If we still need to compete, for the lack of better words, with the outside world. I know the motto of community banks is very different, but still this needs to happen.
Jill, what do you think?
Well, I don't disagree. What I would add is, I just read one of Ron Shevlin's articles today about the successes of the digital banks and the fintechs and how their deposit acquisition versus traditional banks and the regional banks and the community banks are really hurting. And I can open an account as fast or faster than Chime. I have more benefits than they do. I get my cell phone number out 24/7 than anybody can access to me, and no one cares. Like, it is getting the consumer to care as we start seeing, especially the wealth transfer to the younger generation, is going to be imperative as an industry. And just even one institution's voice is going to make just a small difference. It's got to be that we got to get our act together as an industry, and we all have to be able to be competitive with these fintech companies. No one is going to be exempt from this loss of deposits that's going to occur over the next 5 to 10 years. No one. Any bank that thinks that they're in a great position now is not what they're going to have. If they look at their numbers and they really looked at what deposits are looking like, and maybe aggregate deposits are staying the same, but accounts are going down, and those that are opening accounts are not the 18 to 25-year-olds, we are all going to be in trouble if we don't collectively do something. So with what I think is going to be a year of incredibly high M&A activity, that's just going to lead to even more detraction for community banks, where we are going to really have to the ones of us that are really wanting to stay around for the long term are the ones that are doing the acquisitions. We've got to get out there and just say, as an industry, that we are as competitive or more competitive than those the fintechs. And the thing about the fintechs that drives you crazy is the ones that are the most successful, they have no need to make money. Like, they're not even profitable. So they can get this extraordinary amount of capital and be able to deploy it with marketing campaigns that I can't do because we're a bank and regulated and we have to be profitable. And so figuring out that equation, that has to happen or start happening this year, or we really are going to have an uphill climb like we've never seen in the next decade.
That's very on the point, Jill. Absolutely. I mean, I cohere to all of your points. These are actual challenges and actual problems that we need to address one by one, right? In the interest of time, the most exciting part of the conversation is Roger. For the lack of better words, I was fascinated while talking to Marcus that why did you start Roger? I mean, I have an immigrant story for myself. I came to this country. I was not given credit at the initial days. I had my shares of struggle. When I heard about yours, I was like, wow. I mean, literally, I need to meet this person and talk about her past struggle, right? So I want to ask you one straight question. Right? So what inspired you, Jill, to start Roger?
Well, I wish it was a super simple answer, and it's amazing that I'm sitting here with Bryan Clagett, because Bryan's been so much a part of the Roger story. But whenever I was 19 years old, I had to leave school because I ran out of money, and I was working in my hometown, living in a storage unit behind a house with no electricity, no plumbing, and was just desperate. I had great grades, strong ACT score, like everything should have been working for me. But there's just like so many young people today, just because you have these even inherent gifts, if you're not in the right situation, it's really hard to take advantage of them, no matter how much you want to. My parents didn't know how, or were unwilling to apply for financial aid, which I would have easily qualified for, and I was really just in this moment of desperation. So I happened to carry groceries out for a recruiter who took the time to learn my story, and said that if I went through basic training and AIT, that I could be considered an independent student, that then I could apply for financial aid on my own, and I could get the GI Bill. And it was like heavens opened up and angels started singing, and I mean, I enlisted the next day. I told that story. Bryan had talked to me about doing a digital bank, potentially, of utilizing some kind of new people coming to the U.S. and collaborating with us. And so it didn't really speak to me until I gave a speech at the local university, and I incorporated that part of my story, which I rarely do. And a young lady came up to me, and so what happened is when I went to basic training IT, all my money was direct deposited into actually this bank, which is just another story entirely. And when I came back, I thought I had $15,000 saved, and what I found was that a family member had written checks on my account the entire time, and my account was in fact overdrawn, and I had no money. And I went to the bank, and they were like, too bad, even though it was forgery, and I should have gotten credit for it, which gratefully I didn't, because it changed my life and the trajectory to be able to have to adjust from then. But so I ended up finding another school to go to that would give me a scholarship, met my husband, everything kind of happened really well. And so I was telling the story at the local university to a leadership group, just trying to let them know that things, when they're dark, they actually can lead to the most light, that these challenges, don't let that dissuade you. And a young lady came up to me afterwards and just said, your story is my story. And this is 30 years after I enlisted. She said that she opened an account. She had to have her mom on the account because she was under 18, and that her mom had a garnishment. And so the garnishment took money out of this young woman's account as soon as she started making money in basic training. Well, it just all clicked that night, just like, wow, I need to contact Bryan, because I think I have an idea. Like, what if we created a bank just for the new service member? There's banks that have been created for the officers of the military, the highest level, where they have a college degree and they're getting much more higher income, but there hasn't ever been one created for the enlisted soldier. At that time is what I was thinking was more my Army terms, but since then, of course, thinking across services. And we started thinking about, what if I could build a bank just for the newly enlisted service member, what would that look like? Well, we could get an automated direct deposit form that's signed by me that makes it really easy that a lot of these service members that are joining the military are homeless, and they're living in fragile situations where they can't take time off and get transportation and go to the bank during business hours. So this gives it to them instantly. It makes it where they can open an account if they're under 18 by themselves. It gave them opportunity to have IDs cards that aren't used for digital banks traditionally, like tribal cards, and military IDs even aren't able to be used in most digital banks. How do we build something that would be incredible? And just the idea just started flowing. And then to think about, and let's not, these service members have been taken advantage of and still are. When you look at the abuse that still happens on the credit side, it is repulsive. And so the number of military families that have food insecure, a quarter of all military spouses are unemployed, even though our unemployment rates have been just near zero for the last few years. And so then it just ignited this almost a shame that I previously had, where I never really talked about my experience, where now it's like, wow, I just told the story about how this darkness created light. Well, this is really what it's made for. It wasn't just made for me to be successful. It was made because that experience that sucked for me. And then I now know that that's not just me. It was so many people that are still experiencing that can do something about it. And so once I started feeling that on our team here, who's 20% of us have served or are currently serving in the military, it just bound like kind of when Spider-Man turns from being a normal kid to being, from Peter Parker to Peter Pan, all the DNA just started connecting together, and it just seemed so right. And so that's really what happened. And then every advisory board member that I reached out to, I had kind of a dream team that I wanted to put together. They all said yes. And the 4-star general I have on my team, the advisory board, when I went to General Funk and asked him if he would be interested, first of all, I said, Jill, I'll do it. I'll do whatever you ask me to do. But he said, I want to share what my financial situation was. And he had a situation where if there was a bank like Roger, he could have been taken care of. And he was a young lieutenant. So this was an officer who had access to these military-focused institutions that help officers, but he didn't have a solution that helped him. So it just ignited all the passions. It just seems so right. And we really believe here, if you do good, you'll do well. And so it all started first with the do good, and we're able to start reaping the benefits now to do well.
So Jill, looking at 2025 and Roger, what do you foresee as being in store?
Oh my gosh, it's going to be so badass. And so we are, these other military-focused large-scale institutions do not have business services. And what we have found, so many that we've got military spouses that are running small businesses. I mean, I knew them as a military spouse doing these side hustles. We'll be able to help those spouses, and then also veterans that have businesses that they want to either open as a side hustle while they're serving or to go into business after service. We'll have complete business services for them. So we can't wait to make Roger just a full service bank to be able to assist our service members achieve all the financial dreams that they have, so deservingly so.
So it's quite an inspiring story. Firstly, I mean, let me take a pause to even understand it. So unknowingly, Jill, did you know that you created something beautiful? Because there's an actual problem that you faced, and you tried solving that problem. And that too for people who matter the most to our society. This is amazing. So I want to direct a very quick question to Bryan. So Bryan, why do you think Roger is so special and near and dear to you?
Well, for me specifically, I when I moved to this part of Virginia, I'm in a region called Hampton Roads, and every branch of the armed forces is extremely well represented here. And there are a lot of DoD, Department of Defense credit unions in this area. But there are also an amazing amount of payday lenders that prey on this demographic. I got my first introduction to the military through my father and my grandfather and my uncle, who served in World War I and World War II. My dad was World War II. And several cousins that served in Iraq. But personally, I got involved in 2004 when I moved here. I did a regional leadership training program with a vice admiral at the time who retired as a full admiral. and the commanding officer of Naval Weapons Station Yorktown. So that was kind of my indoctrination. And then because of where I live, you're kind of always indoctrinated by the military. It's a very, sounds corny, almost a patriotic part of the country to live in. Because, I mean, when a ship returns, it's a big deal. It's covered on news. People go down to the ship, down to the naval station to see it come in. They go to the bridge tunnel. I mean, it's a big deal. So that was important to me. I've also always had a focus since I was involved in the early days of the Community Reinvestment Act at Core States in Philadelphia. I've always been passionate about the underserved, but I think in the terms of Roger, it's the underserved serving the overserved. These are people that serve our country, in many cases at the age of 17, 18, and 19. And they should have more options than the options they have today. Options that make sense, that truly are interested in their best interest at heart.
It's fantastic connecting with leaders like you, Jill and Bryan, who do things because of a mission and vision. It's not just managing P&L and running books. That's the most important thing across, and that's the reason this podcast is designed to honor outliers like you, who are actually bringing and making a difference every single day to the greater good. So, in the interest of time, I would like to wrap up this episode, but this was just a nugget of amazing conversation. Again, thank you, both of you, Jill and Bryan, for joining us. I appreciate it.
And Anurag, great job on the podcasts.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, congrats.